welcome to our channel, Those Twins Who Knit. My name is Rachel.
And I'm Jessica.
And today we are sitting down and talking about everything that we knit in 2024.
Which was quite a lot. So we're planning to break this up into two parts. So today we're going to talk about everything that we made in January through June. And then we're planning to do a second part at a later date where we talk about everything that we made July through December.
And when we talk about things that we finished per month, we're going to do that in terms of what was finished. So for instance, in January, there might be things that we cast on in 2023, but we're counting them as 2024 because they were finished this year. And same with the months. So even if we worked on it mostly in one month, if we finished it in the next month, it's going to be in that month.
We do also want to acknowledge that we're in a phase of life where we have a lot of free time and capacity to work on knitting a lot. So we don't want this to feel like any sort of comparison or anything like that. For us, this is just a really good opportunity to look back at all of the things that we made and then reflect on, what we enjoyed working on, what we didn't, what we found ourselves wearing a lot, maybe things that didn't hold up as well. And hopefully use this as an opportunity to kind of celebrate the things that we did in 2024 and also use that as like a little bit of a guide of reflecting on what we want to focus on going into the next year. And I feel like knitting is such a journey, and over time you just learn so much more about what you enjoy and your preferences, and they can change as the seasons go by and everything. But just want to use this as a chance to reflect on that and kind of go back and see how things held up and what we enjoyed.
And what works in our wardrobe, what will change going into the new year, and just generally looking back at all the progress that we've made.
In most of our podcasts, we try to be really good about linking everything in the description, but YouTube does have a limit on how much you can put in the description of each video. So did want to give everyone a heads up. We're going to do our best to put pattern names, designers, yarn names, brands, all of that good stuff, but we may not be able to include links like we typically do. But hopefully we'll still have enough information that you can easily search anything up that you want to learn more about. If you run into any questions or anything, please leave us a link in the
or a comment
down below, and we'll do our best to reply.
The fun thing about this year is that this is our first full year, from January to now, where we've had our podcast. And so everything that we've talked about here, we've talked about at some other point on YouTube. And so we can also direct people to those episodes if you have more in-depth information you're looking for. Hopefully we would have had it in another episode if we don't get it here, because it kind of feels like it's been a while since we've talked about some of these projects. So.
Yep. And because of that, I don't think we're going to go super in depth of every little thing of when making it, but more just generally did we enjoy it? Has it held up? Did we find ourselves wearing it? What we would have changed? Things like that, very high level.
Before we get into all that, we thought we would briefly mention what we're wearing today, because we are wearing hand knits. So I'm wearing the Monday sweater by Petite Knit, which I knit in Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Camel, and the soft silk mohair in the color Caramel, which pair really nicely together. This is a very simple raglan. You start from the collar and work your way down, all in stockinette. So it's a very relaxing, kind of mindless knit that I just very recently finished. So this is not a January through June knit, but it was just very cozy, and it's my most recently finished, so I wanted to wear it today.
I'm wearing the cloud sweater by Petite Knit, which is pretty well known for all of its ruled edges. And I used the recommended yarn, which is Isager Eco Soft, and then their soft silk mohair. And I used the same colors that she used in her promotional photos and everything like that. I just copied straight what she did. And I love this sweater. It is so soft. It's so cozy. It's one of my absolute favorites. But I didn't love working on this as much just because of the gauge. I felt like the yarn was maybe just a tad thicker for the needles than I wanted. It felt like, when your yarn is too thick for your needles, and then it kind of hurts your hands to work on it a little bit. I kind of felt like that. And at the time when I was working on it, I was really questioning why there was a mohair, because you cannot see it when you look at the yarn. It really just looks like the Eco Soft. But a lot of people did leave comments saying it's probably for the structural integrity of the sweater, which makes a lot of sense. So I'm glad I did include the mohair, but wasn't my absolute favorite thing to knit just because it felt like the gauge was a little bit off for the needles that I used.
Let's get started with January. You've knit more than I have, so I feel like you should start before me.
I have 4 sweaters, a sock, and a hat in January, but most of these were things that were like almost done in December that I feel like over the holidays I just had like cast-on-itis and I just kept casting things on. And so a lot of them like carried into January, and then that's the month that I like wrapped everything up. So it's not...
Yeah, you have way more than usual. I do.
So the first sweater that I finished in January was this Abby sweater. And this is a pattern by Sandnes Garn Design. And I used Scout by Kettlebourne Woolens in this like dark charcoal color, almost black, but not quite. And then they're like natural white color. So I'll hold that up real quick. And for this sweater, I was really concerned about the yarn bleeding. And so I did rinse all of the like almost black color with vinegar before I started knitting it. And I think that helped a lot. I don't think I got any color bleeding whenever I swatched it. So super happy I did that. Would definitely do it again. The ribbing on this was so annoying because it's so much twisted rib.
I don't think I could do it, to be honest.
The hem is so long and it was so much twisted ribbing. And I was so dumb because the original pattern has giant slits in the side, which means when you're doing the twisted ribbing, you have to do it back and forth. And so you have to twist all of your purl stitches when you're working the wrong side, when you're going back and forth, you know, for the split hem. And I hate doing twisted purls. And then later I decided I didn't even like the slits and I sewed them up. So I'm like, dang, if I had known that, I could have just knit it all in the round, and I'd rather do twisted knit stitches than twisted purl stitches. So that was kind of a waste. But I found the slits were really cute with some pants, but I tend to wear a lot of like high-waisted pants, and I like to either tuck in my sweaters or do like a French tuck because we're millennials and that's just what we do. And so I just found that the slit was really hard for me to wear this sweater with a lot of the pants that I wanted. And so I'm glad that I sewed it up, but I am just like, dang, I could have saved myself a lot of time, a lot of trouble had I done that from the start.
I really appreciate that the sleeves and hem have this little contrast color detail. I think that's very nice.
I love that detail.
Yeah. I've got a sweater I did this year that has that too, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So yeah, this one's nice and cozy. I really like this one. It's super, super boxy, but that just makes it really comfy and easy to wear.
The first piece that I finished in 2024 was my Colette Pullover by Sari Nordland. I'll pull this up so you can see all the beautiful texture that it's got. It is an all-over cabled sweater with these broken like garter and lace rows in between, I guess is how you'd say it. And so it feels kind of airy, even though it's really a cabled sweater. I knit it with Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Nordic Beach, and the Mohair, I think the color was Marzipan. I'm pretty positive of that. And I gotta say that this color on the website looks a lot more like beige than gray.
I've ordered that yarn before and I thought it was going to be beige, and then when I got it and it was gray, I was a little, I was thrown off.
I actually had this in stash for a while, and this was really the project of trying to get it out of stash, which I'm very happy with that choice for it. I think that it works really well for it. But yeah, it's definitely more gray than you would think online. So if you're ordering this color, just be aware of that. I will say that because I was working with stash yarn, I knit the second size, but I think that I really could have even sized up to the third size on it because it doesn't have quite as much positive ease as I wish it did, especially in the sleeves. I had to stretch these so much, and so it fits really well, I think. I'm pretty happy with it, but when I was knitting it in my mind, I was expecting it to, or hoping, I guess, that it would be a little bit more oversized than it is. And so I definitely get some use out of this, but it's not my most worn, my most frequent go-to sweater. But because of the eyelets, it is really nice for those days when you do want a sweater but not get overheated. And so overall, I really enjoyed working on this pattern. I am really happy with how it came out, and it was a nice way to start the year.
The second thing that I finished in January was this Audrey Jacket by Coco Amour Knitwear. So I'll hold it up real quick. It's just this beautiful boucle texture jacket. It's all stockinette, so very simple, but the boucle yarn makes it just so fun and cozy. This was a test knit, and the yarn was sponsored, which was really nice of the designer to work with Gepard Garn to have this yarn provided for free. So the main yarn is their boucle teddy deer yarn, and then the button band and I-cord edging uses their Puno yarn. And then I kind of copied the designer. She had really sparkly buttons, so I did the same thing. And I don't remember where I got these, probably just Joann's or somewhere like that. Joann's, maybe Michael's. They're just craft store buttons, but I think they're really cute. I really like them on this jacket.
I feel like this looks like a fancy jacket.
It does.
Like you could wear it to a party or something.
Yes. It's very cozy, very warm. I didn't wear this maybe as much as I thought I was going to. It did feel like I had to very much like style this jacket. It didn't feel like a thing that you just like throw on and walk out the door, but I do really love how cozy it is. This was another one where the yarn was maybe not the most fun to work with, because even though it's all stockinette, the boucle has all of these little like loops on it, and it's super easy to catch a loop instead of the actual stitch when you're knitting it. And so there were times where I found I had to like really be careful about like how I was inserting my needle into the yarn, or like sometimes I would catch my needle on a loop, and sometimes it was easier to just break it than it was to like, I don't know, start over. So maybe not like the smoothest, fastest knitting experience. Like I thought because of the large gauge of this that it would knit up super, super quickly. And it was a pretty quick knit, but it was not as quick as I thought it was going to be, if that makes sense.
It didn't fly.
It didn't fly. It wasn't just like zooming off the needles, but that's okay. That's not the point of knitting.
The other piece that I finished in January was my Elisabeth blouse by Petite Knit. And I made this piece also in knitting for Olive Merino and soft silk mohair, this time in the color navy. This one, I will say, was probably in my most worn pieces. It's not the most worn of this year, but I got a whole lot of use out of it. And I have to say, there's probably some cat hair or something, but it really has not pilled. It looks, I would say, almost as good as when I finished it. And so I'm really happy with how this turned out. That's kind of why I gravitate towards knitting for Olive so much, is that I've really had good luck with how their yarn wears over time. I feel like I don't have to do a lot of maintenance on it. So this is not the only garment that is knitting for Olive this year either. It starts with a Judy's Magic cast on, and then you make the collar. Once you get past the collar part, it really is a lot like just knitting a traditional raglan. So while it started out a little bit intimidating, it was overall a really easy piece to knit. And I feel like in my wardrobe, this has become a very like casual throw-on piece. Like I wear it a lot with jeans and tennis shoes to go to the like I've worn it to the airport, or just like go around to the store if I need a quick errand, or even like we've had a couple trips where you have to wake up and leave the hotel and you don't really want to move, and like just throwing something easy on. This has become that piece for me, like my go-to. I need a casual, quick outfit, and it's just really cozy, comfy, something that I've gotten a lot of use out of. Those are all my January, so you are
Oh my gosh.
up.
I have a few more. The next sweater that I finished, I believe, was the Salty Days sweater by Kudovikika, and I used Berrocco's Vintage DK, and I believe I held it with Aloft by Knit Picks. So it was like a DK held together with a silk mohair to make like a worsted weight. So I'll hold it up. I love all of the different like texture and stitch patterns of this one. I found that's something that I don't know, I just gravitate towards all knits that have like fun textures, and every row is a little bit different, and I find myself, I don't know, I find them more engaging than just stockinette. I love a good stockinette piece, but I don't know, there's something nice about having something that's kind of potato chippy like this, where you feel like you're constantly like doing something different.
Yeah, it'd be like, oh, I'm so close to finishing this section, and then, oh, I'm so close to finishing this section, and just like keep going.
Yes. Yeah. And I love the yarn. The vintage GK does have like a little bit of acrylic to it, but it's so soft, and I found that it wears really well. And it's also super affordable, so it's honestly one of my favorite just like go-to yarns. I've had a really good experience with it, and with the mohair, I think it's really soft. So I think the only thing that I didn't love about this sweater, and I would probably change were I to make this again, is I thought the sleeves were going to be a lot wider than they were.
Yeah, they are kind of narrow.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be a little more oversized and then almost have like a balloon effect down at the bottom. And that really wasn't the case. I don't know. They're fine, they're decent, but I probably would change that were I to make another one. But speaking of potato chippy sweaters where every row is a little bit different, I also made the Storm Sweater by Petite Knit in January, and for this one I used Pure Gint by Sandnes Garn. And this one is very similar to the last one in that it's like the horizontal rows of like every section being a little bit different. So I'll hold it up so you can see some of the fun texture and sections. I don't think I made any sort of modifications, and honestly I wouldn't. Like, I love the sweater exactly how it is. I think it fits great. It's cute with jeans, it's cute with skirts, it's easy to throw on. I found that the yarn has weared pretty well. I've heard a lot of people say that this yarn does pill, but I haven't really had any issues with that so far. So hopefully that continues to be the case. And then I also finished...
What the heck is that?
What is that noise? What is that noise?
I think it's my neighbor.
We shall carry on. In January, I also finished the Weekend Hat by Hiromi Nagasawa. So I'll hold it up. Hopefully you can see all the cables. This one I mostly just made because I wanted to get this yarn out of stash. This is Kettlebourne Woolens Scout yarn in this like dark brown colorway. And it's the same yarn that I used to make an Eva cardigan in 2023. So after I finished that, I had a bunch of extra yarn and wanted to do something with it. So I made this little hat, and I think it's so fun and so cute, and I just absolutely loved the cables. And I think this is actually the only hat that I made in 2024 somehow. I don't know, I feel like I always like gravitate towards garments, and then I forget about accessories other than socks. But sadly, this is my only hat, and it's a good reminder that I do want to make some more in the next year.
I like the cables, and I like that you did a dark yarn with it actually, because it makes it very subtle, but the light does catch the texture. So very pretty.
Thank you. Oh shoot, and it's still me. I also finished the 3-leaf socks by Paula Pereira, which is in the 52 Weeks of Socks Volume 1 book. So I'll hold them up. You can see the yarn that I used is Coast to Coast Natural Sock in the colorway Secret House. Gothic House with Secrets, I think is what it was. It was from her fantasy, no, not fantasy, her book tropes collection. So you can kind of see, if I flatten it out a little bit, the reason it's called 3-leaf socks is because it has 3 different little leaves going down the front, and then they're mirrored on each sock. So I don't know if this is the right or the left sock, but basically the opposite sock has these leaves just in the reversed order. So I'll put another picture on screen so you can see that a little bit better. But I thought these socks were super fun. They were knit toe up, if I remember correctly, which is not my usual method for making socks. So I think I had to experiment a little bit with like when to start doing the gusset. Usually I like to do socks that are cuffed down, and I feel like that's gives you a little more leeway of like when you can start the gusset. And then I always know to start the toe when it gets to like the end of my pinky. So I feel like I have a little bit of a better way of like measuring cuff down socks versus when I'm not as used to knitting them like toe up. But I do think these were really cute and really fun, and I did enjoy working on these quite a bit.
I think we are into February. I made 2 things in February. One was a sweater and one was a pair of socks.
I also knit a sweater and a pair of socks.
The sweater that I finished was the Nord Pullover by Henny Rimmon. And I knit this using the Fiberco Cumbria held with tin silk mohair from Sandnes Garn. So it's got a pretty big gauge to it, and it's got these really beautiful stripes, but within the stripes, they're like almost what I would describe as checkered. Like you alternate every other stitch being the colors for 5 rows, and then you have a little bit of stockinette and going back into these stripes, which I really liked that it was like a striped sweater, but a little bit different. It's got like this subtle, I don't know, differentiation from just a plain striped sweater, which I really liked.
And this one also has that detail that we liked on the Abby sweater, where it's just a couple of like really thin rows at the top of the collar and at the sleeves.
And it also, I was gonna say, it has it at the sleeves and the bottom as well. This one does have a lot of ribbing to it in the pattern, and I cut some of the ribbing down or omitted a little bit of it because I just really didn't want to do that much. And even with shortening the ribbing, it is still a very large, long sweater. It's definitely not cropped, even though I did crop it a little bit. Overall, I do really like this piece. I'm very proud of it in terms of what I was able to knit, but I would change a couple of things. One thing that I've learned is that through wearing this a little bit, the collar does not have a lot of depth to it, and so when I wear it, it almost looks like it's like
a boat neck.
Yes, yeah, that's a good description. It's very straight across in the appearance when you wear it, at least. Like here, holding it up, you can tell that it's got some difference, but when you wear it, you can't really see that very well. So I would definitely like make the collar a little bit more like a traditional crew neck. And then the other thing is just in general, in terms of what I prefer for positive ease, this is a lot more than what I think I need. I think it's got at least 11 or 12 inches of positive ease, and so it's just a very oversized sweater, and sometimes I think maybe a little bit too oversized, because when I wear it, I think it feels very like slouchy, cozy, casual, which I appreciate in some moments, but there's other times that I'm like, ooh, is this what I'm going for? And it's maybe a little bit harder to style. So, and I knit the smallest size that she has in the pattern as well. So it's definitely got a lot of positive ease recommended in the pattern. And so I don't know if this would sound bad. I would almost love to take this stitch pattern, but have it in a different construction where it's not quite so much positive ease and a different neck. But I really like it still. I think it's really cute. Yeah. So not the most warm, but also not the least either.
The only sweater that I finished in February was my Haraboji cardigan, which I was super proud of because this was quite a labor of love. It also has a lot of positive ease. And then also the construction of this is super unique. It's by Nits, and the way it's constructed is you start at one sleeve and then knit it all the way across to the other sleeve. And then for like the body where you get to this part right here, you cast on and cast off stitches in order to get those, and then seam those together at the end. And then afterwards pick up stitches around the collar and the button band and all that. This sweater was also the first time I ever had to cable on the wrong side. So I feel like usually when you're doing like a cable knit, or at least most of the ones that I've seen before, it's like on the right side is when you work the cables where you actually do like the cable crosses, and then usually the wrong side rows you just knit the stitches as they present, or if it's like a seed stitch or moss stitch or something, you know, you just kind of work in pattern and are able to establish a pattern. Whereas this one was unique in that even on the wrong side you were still doing cable crosses, which I just have not done a whole lot before. So that was a fun challenge, but it was very unique. But I do think it makes the lattices super crispy, which is really nice.
Crispy.
Very crispy. So I did really enjoy working on this one. I used Fivel yarn by Rama or Romana. I'm not 100% sure how to say it, but it was like an Aran weight 100% wool yarn. And I did really love it, except for when I got to all of the ribbing. I think I've just discovered I don't like working with yarn when it's like a bigger gauge than what the needle recommends. And so I did find that that was just really tight to work up. But it does make the ribbing look super nice. I am really happy with how it turned out. And I really love these toggle buttons.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
I love the toggle buttons.
Originally, I had some toggle buttons in here that were a little more orange. And then I think you ordered these buttons for a cardigan that you made in like November, maybe October, November.
Yes, and when I ordered it, I don't know what happened, but it came with a million, I swear.
Yeah, you had like a ton of
I
extras.
still have
and I was
so
like,
many.
Oh, I don't know if I love the orange. You have extras. I just stole these buttons and swapped them out. And I'm really happy that I did that because I think the like dark brown looks a whole lot better than the kind of like, yeah, they were just orange.
Yeah, I like the dark brown with it.
Yeah. But yeah, this one's super cozy. I really like this sweater. It's maybe not my most worn because like you were saying, like it's maybe got a little more positive ease to where I feel like I have to really style it and I can't just like throw it on and have it look like super nice and, you know, polished and ready to go. But I think that's what I like about it too. I like the positive ease. Like it feels very cozy and comfy and very, I don't know, almost like scandy, like I'm gonna go skiing or something. Even though we don't live anywhere near mountains or skiing or anything like that.
And we probably wouldn't be very good at skiing if we did have that opportunity.
Oh no, it would be terrible.
The other piece that I finished in February was a pair of socks. I knit these up in Sagan yarns. The base is Ratatosk. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it's not really a color that she has often. She called it Monster One because all of her yarns have these kind of like mythical creature and cryptonoid names like mermaid and basilisk and things like that. And so this was a dye that she didn't end up using for her collection, but she still liked it and wanted to put the skeins that she had dyed out there. And so she called it Monster One. I don't think you can still get it. So I picked up a couple of skeins of this. Didn't really know what I would make with it and decided that the Poet socks, because they have this like kind of leafy motif to them, that it might look really pretty in green. And overall, I just really like lace socks. I feel like they look so delicate and impressive and just like something that you could never get in the store. But I do have to say, because this yarn is 100%, I think it's 100% Corriedale. It's not a nylon in any way, and it's not a very soft yarn. It's not my favorite pair of socks because of that. I don't tend to think that I'm a really sensitive person to yarn, but it's just the roughness on my feet is not my favorite. So they're okay. They are nice, but I've knit the Poet socks before and I think I like the other ones a little bit better if I'm being honest.
That's fair.
And that's okay.
That's okay. I also knit a pair of socks in February. So these are my Kohaku socks by Yuka Knits. And they're just these beautiful cabled socks that have these diamonds down the front. So I'll try to squish them out a little bit so you can see the diamonds. But I really enjoyed working on these. I love a cabled sock. I just think they're so fun and they just look so classic. And I really liked that this one has the point at the toe. So this is another pair of toe-up socks. Somehow I ended up doing quite a few of those this year, even though it's not my preferred method. But it has a little point down at the toe, which I thought was a really cute detail. And I actually ended up starting it a little bit earlier, I think by maybe a centimeter or a centimeter and a half than what the designer recommended, because I did want it to be just a little bit lower and closer to my toe than what some of her pictures were showing. I used Coast to Coast Classic Sock in the colorway Button, which is probably my favorite yarn ever. This is my second or third pair of socks with Button, and I have another skein at home to make another pair because I just love it so much. I just think it's just so beautiful. It's just like a perfect off-white. It's not cream, it's not ivory, it's not beige. It just has a little bit of depth to it that I don't think you get with like just a plain white sock. But it's still like almost a plain white sock. Like it's so close.
Yeah, it definitely reads like as a white, but I've called this color seashell before. Yeah. It reminds me of a little seashell.
Yes, I think that's a good description for it. Yeah. So I really love these ones. I think this one had a 60 or 64 stitch count, and so I believe I used US 2 needles when knitting this up, and I think that's I think 1.5 or 2 is probably my preferred sock knitting at the moment. That can always change, but I think that's what I'm like really gravitating towards right now.
We will go into March.
One of the sweaters that I made in March was the Judy sweater by Gregoria Fibers. And once again, this is just like such a fun texture. This one has kind of a mixture of like garter stitch mixed with pearl rows in between, and then it has little eyelet rows. So it just felt like every couple rows you were switching it up and doing something different. So it has a little bit more going on to it than I think like initially looks like it, because it almost looks like it's straight garter stitch in between the rows of eyelets, but there's actually pearl stitches that kind of separate and almost make these like rectangles or squares, which I think is super fun. Very happy with this sweater, and I've always had good experiences knitting Gregoria Fibers patterns.
The only garment that I finished in March was also a Gregoria Fibers, so that worked out really well. And this is one that I cast on, I think around like August or September of 2023, because it was just coming into where you could like feel fall, and I was getting really excited for those projects. And so I put it aside, and then March hit and I was like, I feel spring around the corner. And so we came back and finished this one. So definitely not completely done in 2024, but we're counting it still. So this is the Margot top by Gregoria Fibers. And I feel like our theme for this season was a lot of textures, because you can tell it's got all over texture pattern. It alternates between like a ribbing, a little eyelet, more eyelets, and then it just kind of goes back in between those patterns. For this project, I used Illimani Sabri 2 in the color Natural, I believe. And this was yarn that I picked up when we went out to Apricot Yarn in San Diego, because we made a trip in, was that 2022 or 23? I think it was 23.
I think it was 23.
Yeah, that sounds right. We made a trip out to San Diego, so I picked that yarn up there. And it felt really special to have a garment that was made with kind of like souvenir yarn, kind of just some special yarn that we don't have at our local yarn shops. And I find that the fit of this is just really something I enjoy. I love that it has kind of that straight edge for a tank top. I know I said I didn't like that with my Nord, but for this one I really like it. And I think that it's really just a nice summer piece. The yarn is a DK, so if it's super hot, it's not my go-to. But just to be honest, if it's like 100+ degrees, because it does get that hot here in Missouri sometimes, I'm probably not wearing anything hand knit at that point. So as long as there is a little bit of a breeze or it's not extreme heat, I find that it wears really, really well, and I don't get too hot or anything like that. So this is probably my favorite summer piece that I've ever made before.
I made that piece in 2023, and I think it was my favorite summer garment of that year, so I'm glad you made one too.
This is one that I could honestly see making in other colors, and I don't see myself doing a whole lot more summer knits, maybe here or there, but it's not something I want to hugely focus on in the new year. But this is a pattern I would definitely revisit.
The other sweater that I made in March is this Fortune sweater by Petite Knit. And this yarn was kindly gifted by We Are Knitters. So they reached out and asked if I wanted to try any of their yarn, and I was really interested in trying this Touch Me Mohair. It does have a little bit of wool content in it, which I thought was super interesting, because I feel like most mohairs that I've seen are 100% like silken mohair, and so seeing a silk mohair combo that also has a little bit of wool was really interesting to me. And I really loved this yarn. it's super light, like it's a very light sweater, but I feel like it's almost a little bit thicker than most other mohairs. So I did hold it double, but it doesn't have hardly any opacity. I mean, it does have a little opacity, but not as much as I feel like I get from a lot of other sweaters. I don't know if that's coming across on camera, but it's super cozy. I just made a super basic raglan. I used the Fortune sweater, but I did omit the eyelets. So typically that sweater had little eyelets that almost look like flowers throughout it, which I think is really cute. But for this one, I just wanted something super simple. I almost wanted it to look a little like vintage or sporty, so I wanted to keep it just very plain stockinette. And then I also lengthened the sleeves quite a bit. So the Fortune sweater calls for maybe half of a sleeve. It's not, I don't even think it's quite 3/4 length. And so for this one, I did lengthen them in order to make it a full length sleeve on me. But yeah, I really love this one. It's very basic. I think the color is really pretty. It's like a nice foresty kind of bluey green, which I don't have a lot of in my wardrobe, but I do think it's very classic and it's like almost a neutral.
I really feel like this looks like a vintage sweater.
Yeah, it feels like one.
Like something you would find at a really good thrift store or something like that.
Yeah.
In a good way, in a good way.
Yes, in a good way, which is what I was going for. So yeah, it was super nice of We Are Knitters to send this to me. I really love this yarn, love this sweater. Very happy with it.
The other piece that I finished in March was a pair of socks. So this is the Mita Socks. Am I saying that right?
I think so.
The Mita Socks by Paula. And I knit this in Sagan yarn. In the base was Ratatas, just like the last pair of socks. And I think the color was called Olven. It looks pretty narrow, but it has a lot of stretch to it when you actually wear it on your feet. And to be honest, this was not fun to make, and I would not make them again.
I think I've made those socks and I did not enjoy doing them just because I don't enjoy twisted ribs.
That's exactly what it is.
It's really twisted stitches that I don't enjoy, and this one is all twisted ribs. Yep. So
it was a lot. They are very nice because since there's a lot of negative ease, they really just like mold to your feet. Although again, this one is 100% Corriedale, so they're not the softest. I think that's what I learned through this, because this was my first time working with sock yarn that wasn't like a wool nylon blend. And while I love the idea of 100% natural fibers, I think that for socks I do appreciate some of that nylon in there. I think that the trade-off is that because this fiber is like a little bit stronger, tougher, I guess is how you describe it, you don't really need the nylon. It wears really well, but it just does not have the same softness. Although I really love the way that Sagan yarn dyes their yarn. I think that their aesthetic and their colors are really beautiful. I think I like the more traditional sock yarns. And I do wear them a little bit, but not a ton. They are nice to have, but again, I wouldn't do it again. I just didn't enjoy the twisted rib. I think it was a lot of work for not that much payoff. I think I would stick to like a normal traditional rib in the future, but it's nice to have another pair of socks. I really like hand knit socks. So
I also have 2 pairs of socks. So the first one that I did was the sprinkled donut socks, or at least that's what I'm calling them. These didn't have a pattern. I just worked them up in broken rib, and I think I used a 72 stitch count on size US 1 needles, and so I would like knit 1 row, and then the next row I would do knit 1, purl 1 throughout the entire thing. So very easy, just a slight modification on like a vanilla sock. And for the top, I did just a couple of rows of knitting with a little purple yarn to bring out all of the purple and the speckles. So the main yarn, and why I'm calling them my like sprinkled donut socks, is called, is the classic sock base from Coast to Coast. And I believe the colorway was called Sprinkled Donuts, yes, which is one that you bought me last year for Christmas.
So she did a like surprise yarn. You couldn't see it before you ordered it, and so it was like a mystery. And around this time of year, I feel like I'm always seeing advents, which we don't really get into, but I just thought having one skein to have a little surprise like everybody who's doing the advents would be really fun. So yeah, I bought one for me, and we'll see something similar here soon.
Yeah. So very basic, but I do really love these socks. I think they're very cute and cozy. And then the other pair of socks that I made was also just a kind of winged vanilla sock, like no pattern, but these ones were knit using Chibi Sport by Moondrake Fibers, and I believe the colorway is called Carrot, because we had quite a debate as to whether or not this was orange or red, and I think it's red.
I still see red.
But she calls it Carrot, which I think of as orange. But I do think it makes just a beautiful, beautiful color, beautiful socks. For these, I did have to experiment quite a bit because I'm used to knitting all of my socks on fingering weight, and I don't think I've ever knit a sport weight pair of sock before, so I remember having to do quite a few trial and errors, and if I remember correctly, I think I ended up with a 52 stitch count, and so these just like flew off the needles because I'm used to having like 64 or 72, and so having such a low stitch count, I feel like that it made these go really, really fast. But I just think they're really cute, and they're just like a fun pop of color with certain outfits. And I think that takes us into April. In April, I finished my Copenhagen cardigan. So this is a pattern by Petite Knit, and I used Fua Fua yarn from Moondrake Fibers, which is a super fluffy cashmere blend fingering weight yarn. And it's got a little bit of variegation, very, very slightly. I don't even know if variegation is the right word. It's tonal. It's got a little bit of tonality to it, so you can kind of see like very, very subtle stripes in it. And then the buttons that I used were kindly gifted by Pigeon Wishes. So she reached out and offered to send me a couple of buttons and some fabric, which was super nice of her. And so this is one of the buttons that she included. And honestly, I need to redo the buttons. I've been procrastinating doing it, but it really bothers me that I accidentally made the buttons a little bit too tight, and now there's like this puckering on the button band, which I don't love, and I feel like whenever I wear it, I find myself like fixing that a lot. I have worn this cardigan backwards quite a few times though. Like sometimes I'll wear it in the front like a cardigan, but I've definitely turned it around and worn it just like a shirt a couple of times, and I think that's almost just as cute. I actually, depends on like what pants I'm wearing, but I kind of like that better in some cases.
I'm just not realizing this color is pretty similar.
Oh dang, it is pretty similar. Yeah. We clearly have like a vibe that we go for, but this is like a super basic cardigan pattern. I really don't remember a whole lot other than it was pretty easy to follow. I mean, just like most Petite Knit patterns, it was basic, easy to follow.
Turned out nice.
Turned out nice. This is probably one of my most worn pieces this year, and I don't really see any. There's maybe like a little bit of pilling on the sleeves, but it's not like crazy bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
April was a pretty slow month for me in terms of finishing things. I only finished one pair of socks and no garments, which is totally okay. I think I did a lot of casting projects on, and I think I had a couple projects where maybe I didn't finish them, just, you know, making decisions and changing our mind and part of the process. So the only thing that I finished in April was this pair of socks that looks a whole lot like the socks that you finished in March. So I think the only difference, I'll hold up, differences, I should say, are I omitted the contrast color that Jessica had on her pair, so mine are just one solid skein of yarn. And I also went up a little bit in gauge because you just said it, 1 or 1.5?
I think I used
ones, and I used 2s and went down just slightly in the stitch count. But other than that, I think they are pretty much exactly the same. They went pretty fast, and it's a very classic texture, just really cozy, comfy socks. But they're all I finished.
That's okay. I also knit another pair of socks in April, and so these are my Ruffle Socks by Petite Knit, and I used Coast to Coast classic sock in the colorway Pigeon Milk, which is this beautiful like not quite buttery, it's not quite yellow, it's not quite orange, it's not quite beige, but it's just a really pretty like warm colorway that I really loved. And these were super simple. I mean, you just do like a little ruffle and then knit long enough to have like a little folded over cuff, and then after that it's just a basic like stockinette sock. I don't love the heel that it has. It has this like short row heel, and I've just found that's not my favorite heel. I prefer the heel flap and gusset, and so I think when you made this pattern later, you switched it, and instead of doing the short row heel, you did the heel flap and gusset, and I actually like that a lot better. I wish I had done what you did.
Should I go ahead and sneak these in even though these are next month?
Yeah.
These I made almost the same as Jessica, and I made them in May, so we'll go back a little bit. But yeah, they're the exact same except for I did do a traditional heel flap and gusset. I think that that was the right choice for me.
I think it looks a lot cleaner because like you can kind of tell on mine, if you look at the heel, it's almost like there's a tiny little hole there. And I suppose I could go back and like stitch over that to close it up. It's really not that big of a deal. And when I looked at Petite Knits, it almost looks like hers has the same thing. So I think it's just a function of the design. But yeah, I just think yours looks a little bit cleaner, and I think the shape's a little nicer, and I prefer that look. And I prefer knitting it that way too. I'd rather do a heel flap and gusset than do a bunch of short rows.
I would too. And also, not that it matters, but I think it lays just a little bit.
I think it does.
Flatter too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. So, still happy with them. I still think they're really cute, but yeah, if I were to do these again, I would definitely do what you did.
Yeah, I'm happy with my choice.
The last thing that I made in April is the Augustine's number 30 shawl by Augustine's DK or Anne-Sophie Velling, and I used Coast to Coast's natural worsted in the colorway Kappa. And so it's this beautiful shawl where you start in the middle and then work garter stitch until you get to the end, and then you do this like lace pattern where you work back and forth in the lace, and on the end here is where you would decrease each time. So on every right side row you like decrease a stitch from this garter section, kind of like you would work a double folded, or not a double folded, a double knit button band. It's kind of the same concept where you like decrease a stitch and then slowly work your way through the rest of the shawl. But it was just so fun to knit. I really enjoyed working on this. It reminded me how much I love shawl knitting. But I have to say, I have not worn this. I just cannot figure out how to style it. Like, I can't get it to look cute. It just looks very
it looks like a nice heirloom piece.
Yes,
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, I haven't quite figured out how to like wrap it so that it looks modern, I guess.
I think shawls struggle to be modern in general. I don't think it's yours or this pattern, and I'm not saying that for all of them. That's not like a blanket statement, but yeah, I can see where that would be a difficult piece to integrate into a wardrobe.
Yeah. I don't regret having made it because I do think it was a really fun process knit. I really enjoyed working with it, and I absolutely love this yarn. We're just kind of suckers for coast to coast yarn, to be honest. So I did really enjoy it, and I do think it was still a really fun knit. It's just one that I think is going to sit in my closet until I figure out what to do with it.
It's very pretty though.
Yeah, and that's okay. That happens sometimes.
So that puts us into May, which is, I think, the only month where I made more things than you.
I think so.
We've already talked about my Ruffle Socks, so we will go on to another item. Why don't I start with a garment? I don't remember the order. I just remember that I made all of these things in the month of May. And so one of those pieces is my Cumulus blouse by Petite Knit. I'll hold it up. It's a pretty simple raglan style piece, but it has a V-neck and I-cords around it. So it has this really clean finish to it. And it's a little bit oversized. I was able to meet gauge perfectly, so I think the pattern intends for a little bit of positive ease. I knit it in Moondrake Fibers Surrey Alpaca. I feel like she had a fun name for it, but I don't think she sells this base anymore. I haven't seen it in a while. And I knit it in the color Ivory, holding 2 strands double. And one thing I'll try to hold up for is that I really liked that the Surrey alpaca gives it a little bit more density than what 2 strands of mohair would give it, which is what the pattern recommends. So I feel like when I see other cumulus blouses, they look a little bit airy and a little bit loose gauge. And this one is just pure fluffiness, which
it's so soft
really
too.
enjoy.
Like, this is,
yeah,
I love mohair, but this is way softer than a mohair.
I agree. I've only used Surrey alpaca twice before, including this one, but I understand why people would prefer it to mohair because this is like a cloud. It feels so good. I really think if it wasn't too hot, I could probably like sleep in this texture. It is so soft. It doesn't irritate at all. And so I really had a good time knitting this up. It was just so, it was like knitting a cloud. That's the only way I can describe it. It was really, really nice. I do think I got the sleeves a little bit too long, but I cuffed them up and it's okay. So yeah, I really like this one.
The only garment that I knit in May was the Tikva top by Lydia Habarber, and I used 1 strand of Knitting for Olive merino held together with their pure silk, which I really like this combination. I think it makes for a nice summer garment in the sense that the silk gives it a little bit more breathability, but then the merino helps it like keep its shape a little bit. So because it is DK, it's probably not like the greatest garment if it's like super, super, super hot, but for a nice, just, you know, regular spring or summer day, I think it's a really nice garment. And I did really like the neckline of this and how it almost creates like a square neckline at the top, which I think is really cute. So I did test knit this for her, and it was just a really easy textured knit. So you guys know I love a good texture, so it almost creates like a waffle look. And you knit the main body and then do the straps afterwards, which I thought was made for a nice, easy garment.
The other garment that I finished in May was one of only 2 test knits that I did for the year. So this is the gray sweater by Dorothy of Adorable Knits, is her handle on Instagram and Ravelry. And again, it's a pretty simple plain raglan. I think I really liked some of my raglan styles this year, but once you find something that works for you, you know, they're just really enjoyable to knit, and I like the way that they wear. So this one has some short rows for a nice crew neck, and I liked the thickness of the crew neck. And then the sleeves are pretty straight until you get to the end. It's got a little bit of like almost a tiny balloon sleeve to it.
Little baby balloon.
Little baby balloon. But other than that, it's really simple, really easy to knit up. I signed up for this test knit because I already had this yarn in stash. I was struggling with what pattern I wanted to use it for. I originally bought it for something that I decided to scrap, and so I was feeling like I wanted to get this yarn out of stash, onto the needles, get it, you know, into the wardrobe. And once this pattern came up, I was like, oh, that will be a good pattern for it. So I didn't do a ton of test knitting this year, but I'm glad that I did this one.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you did 1 strand of Knitting for Olive merino held together with 2 silk mohair strands?
Yes, that's right. Okay. And this is Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair in the color nut brown for both of them, which I feel like I went on a journey with this color because on the website I thought it looked a little bit warmer than it really is. And so when it came in, I was just very not sure that I loved the color, and I thought it looked like potatoes.
I love it.
And yeah, now I do. Like, now that I have it as a garment, I genuinely really do love it, and I wear it all the time. But it's just kind of funny how, like, I don't know, things will change in your mind over time. And
I think too, when you're picturing one thing, even if you like what you get, if it wasn't what you were picturing, it's kind of hard to reconcile those 2 things sometimes.
I think I was having that.
In this case, like, I love this color so much. I want a sweater just like this.
I've honestly grown to really cherish this piece. I would put it in probably my top 5 for this year. So it worked out really, really well, and I was really glad that Dorothy had me for this test knit because I enjoyed it so much and I still enjoy this piece. And overall, I'm really happy that I'm not doing a ton of test knits, but the ones that I have said yes to, I've gotten some pieces that I really like.
The only other item that I made in this month was the Tide Loops bag by Other Loops. So it almost looks like it has like little waves of pearl bumps within like other waves of stockinette. It's kind of hard to describe. The pattern was really interesting because it actually counted how many stitches you needed to do. So it was like charted, but because some of the rows would have like, I don't know, like 10 to 20 stitches in a row that you need to do, it would count out and say like, okay, this is going to be like a section of 4 or 15 or 17 or however many it was, and that way you didn't have to like sit there and count every single one of the boxes in the chart, which was kind of nice. And the yarn that I used is Tin Line by Sandnes Garn Held Double. I originally bought this thinking I was going to make some sort of garment out of it, and then when I got it, I realized it was like almost the exact same color as my skin tone, and I didn't love that. I felt like I would only wear this if I was like super, super tan, which doesn't usually happen because I don't usually spend like that much time out in the sun in the summer, and even when I do,
Jessica's the sunscreen queen.
I am so scared of getting burned. And it happens occasionally, but I really try to avoid it when I can. So I just didn't think that it was smart to make a garment out of this and say like, oh, I'd only wear it in the summer under like these conditions when those conditions are very unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
So I switched paths and decided to make a bag instead, which I think was a better choice. So it is kind of floppy. I don't know if this was the greatest material for a bag. I wish I had a little bit more structure, but at the end of the day, like it's just like a bag to stuff some things in when going to the pool or the beach or anything. So it's not that deep, but I do think having something that maybe had a little bit more structure to it probably would have been a better choice.
The last piece that I made in May was a pair of socks. And this pair was heavily inspired by a pair of socks that Jessica knit in April. And so I took the same yarn. This was Moondrake Fibers Chibi Sport in the color Carrot, which is red, we think. Although it definitely has like an orangey undertone to this red. And it's just a plain pair of stockinette socks, just like you made, except for I think that I did a 2x2 ribbing and you did a 1x1, right?
I think so. And it looks like you also did a tubular cast on, and I don't think I did that. I think I just like dove right in and did a regular long-tailed cast on.
Yeah, but other than that, I think that I followed all the same notes as you. I think that you sent me the amount of stitches to cast on, and I really just followed what you did to make a really simple pair of vanilla socks.
I love them.
I love the little subtle pop of red. It's fun to have a very neutral outfit, but then a fun pair of socks. I think that that's really a cute way to integrate a little bit of color. So I do enjoy wearing these quite a bit.
I think that takes us into June, and for whatever reason, I ended up making or finishing a ton of things in June. These ones that I'll kind of talk about together. I actually ended up making 2 Subby Tops by Suzanne Mueller or Paula Strict.
I can hold this up for you if you'd like.
So I made the first one in Line by Sandnes Garn, and it's just this white kind of creamy color. And for this one, there's multiple options in the pattern to have different necklines. I say multiple, I think there's 2. You can do ribbing or no ribbing, and so for this one I did opt to do the ribbing at the top, but then for the black one, which I knit using I believe 1 strand of pure silk held together with 1 strand of merino, both by Knitting for Olive. And for that one, I did not do the ribbing at the top, just because I didn't think it would be worth it on this black yarn. I don't think you would be able to see it.
And it kind of has like a little subtle roll because of that, I think.
Yeah. So this one does have quite a bit of cat hair, so please excuse that. It does stick to it. I believe I made the first size in both of them, and I really liked that because I think you also made a black version of this, and you sized up, but then ended up having a little extra room at the underarm that I don't think I experienced.
I would not size up on this one, I don't think. In fact, this is one I would love to redo because it's so simple. But we'll see. We'll see when we get there.
Yeah. Yeah, these ones I feel like kind of flew off the needles. They went really fast. But I did find out that I wore both of these quite a bit. I thought they were really cute. They were easy to throw on with like linen pants in the summer. This one, the one made with tin line, I think is a little more breathable just because that one does have a little bit of merino. I think it's slightly warmer and slightly denser. So I think this was a better choice if I were, I don't know if I would make another
third one.
I feel like two is
a lot.
You know, especially in these two colors, they're very neutral, go with everything. I don't know if I need a third one, but I think if I ever got to that point where I decided I did want to make another one, I would go with line again and use this combination. Or not a combination. I think I held, the line is like a worsted that I held single. DK or worsted, I feel like it kind of depends on like what you're using it for. Whereas that one, the black one, I did have to hold 2 strands together to make that like DK weight.
Love it. Very classic. I realized I probably could have been sharing my piece while Jessica was talking about hers because I also made a Subby top in June and I did size up on this. I would not do that. I would definitely go back to the other size or the recommended size. But I knit this in tin line held double in the color black. Although the tin line black, I don't know if this will show up on camera well, and also excuse a little bit of cat hair. It has some marling in it. So if you compare this to Jessica's Pure Silk and Merino, it's a much more solid black, which I think that I like a little bit better. I happen to just have this in stash, so I'm glad I used it up. But yeah, I really like how this one is just a little bit more flat. But overall, this is just such a classic pattern. I did the ribbing like you did on the white one for the black, and it doesn't have quite as much of a roll, so I think that I liked that choice.
I think that was a smart choice. I think I would have done that on the black one just so it doesn't roll quite as much. It's not terrible, but I do like that yours lays a little bit more flat. But that might also be just the yarn as well, not just the ribbing.
Yeah. The only thing I really had trouble with this pattern, and it wasn't in making it, but just how I wear it, is that the underarms are low enough that sometimes my bra strap will show like where this is lower than where my bra strap hits. And so I still like it. I love the way it looks on me, but then I kind of have to be careful with what I choose to wear under it. And that kind of limits it a little bit for me.
I think what you could have done, if you wanted the extra positive ease, was still follow the length of the underarm for the smaller size. Yeah. And then you would have still had a little extra positive ease, but it would have been shorter because I think the difference comes from yours just hits a little lower in the underarm.
Yeah, this line right here is a little bit too long for me, but I'm still really happy with it. I can see myself maybe, if I'm really dedicated, unraveling it and redoing it in the smaller size. Or I've even thought about maybe like seeing if I could subtly stitch this up a little bit, but it really isn't too bad of a problem. I just kind of have to be a little bit more aware of what I put under it. So it's not the end of the world, but just something that I have to be careful of. So in June, we also both knit Florence bags by Petite Knit, and we used different yarn for it, but we both purchased the Petite Knit handles, so they kind of have some matching similarities. I think we also both purchased the same zipper too, right? So what yarn did you use for yours?
I used Isager's Hort Organic, which I do love. It's really soft. Like, I really like the way that it looks, but it did turn out a little bit more gray than I thought it was going to. I thought mine would be a little bit closer in color to yours, but yours is a little bit like warmer toned, which I like.
Yeah, I really like the color choice on mine. I used, I'm probably not going to pronounce it right, but in English it looks like Isager Japanese Bemold. It literally translates to Japanese cotton, so if you Google Isager Japanese cotton, this will come up. and I don't remember the color name, but it does not have many color options, so it will be probably pretty obvious which one I used. And I really like that yarn choice. It is much softer than I thought it was going to be for what it looked like. And I thought it creates, here, let me see if I can flatten this out. It creates a really nice texture that just looks a little bit fancier than how it feels to knit it. Like, it's a pretty simple knit overall, but it looks more complicated.
And the pattern has you start in a circle from the top, and then you do a couple rows of stockinette before going into the main pattern, and then you work the body until you get to the bottom where you do decreases, kind of like the crown of a hat, which made it pretty simple. But then afterwards, once you finish knitting this whole thing, that's when you go through and add, I used a machine to sew in a lining and then the zipper at the end. I also found too, I blocked my bag before I actually like went through and did the lining and the zipper and everything. And I think yours makes a little bit more of like a crescent shape than mine does. And maybe that's the yarn, maybe it's the blocking, maybe it's just
a little bit of both.
A little bit of both, or how we did the zipper or something. But I like that yours has like more of a natural,
it's kind of slouchy.
Yeah, mine does it, but I feel like I kind of have to like tell it to do that, if that makes sense.
Mine is just naturally like floppy.
Yeah, yours is a little floppier than this one.
I like it.
Yeah.
I've really gotten a lot of use out of mine too. It was really nice this summer.
Yeah. I feel like it looks summery. Like, I don't think this is the sort of bag that I would wear in the winter because it looks like summer.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a really cute summer bag. The next item that I finished, I think, was the Margot top, which Rachel's already talked about, so I'm not going to go on and on. But this is the same pattern that she used, the Margot top by Gregoria Fibers. And I used Berrocco's Summer Silk yarn, which has actually been discontinued, but I had several skeins in my stash from years ago when I had purchased it. If I remember correctly, I think I got it at a Yarn Barns every year. Over Christmas break, they do like an inventory sale where they discount everything in order to try to get rid of some stuff before they like count their inventory for the year. So I'm pretty sure I got this yarn at that sale, and it had been in my stash for a long time and I needed something to do with it. And since I'd already made this top in white last year, I knew that I liked the pattern. So I did decide to make another one, except the white one that I made the previous year, I think I made a size 2, and I like that a lot better. I like that it has a little bit more positive ease. This one feels it feels a little bit more fitted, which makes sense. I mean, it's a smaller size, but I just don't think I like that as much. And at the time when I made the white one, I didn't necessarily love that it was almost sitting at the edge of my shoulders, but now I've come to really love that look, and I wish that this one did the same thing. So I kind of regret having made this in the smaller size. I wish I had sized up. But I do think it's really cute. I do love the color for this one, and the summer silk is really nice. It's very breathable, very light. It's very fun to work with, so I'm kind of sad that Berrocco discontinued it. I wish they still had it as an option, but it was nice to get it out of stash and to finally work with it.
The last garment that I finished in the first half of the year is the Sunshine Tee by Audrey Jacket, and I knit it in Pearl Soho Sweetgrass, which is a very light fingering yarn. And it is part cotton and part alpaca. So I don't remember the percentages, but it's got a little bit of cotton and alpaca in it. You can tell where it's been a little bit folded. It's got like a tiny line where it's been put in my closet for the winter. But it's just a very classic crew neck tee. And it's got kind of set in sleeves that I think just looks like a really classic t-shirt. A little bit about this pattern. I did find it a little bit, not difficult, but something I was a little bit worried about, that you knit the collar from the inside out and then fold it over, and you very carefully stitch all of these little stitches down. And I was trying to be really, really careful about doing that because I was worried that if I didn't do it perfectly that it would look kind of messy. And I think I achieved it, but it definitely was a little bit tedious. And I also think that if I was to redo this, I would lengthen the sleeves, because I think for what I would like in a t-shirt, the sleeves are just a little bit I don't know, they kind of look choppy almost. Like I wish that I had elongated them a little bit, but I don't know if I had enough yarn for that. I think I might have kept them this length, partially because the pattern recommended it, but also I think I was working with a fairly limited quantity of yarn. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it. It hasn't been the most worn garment, but it hasn't been the least worn either. It's really casual, so I wear it on pretty casual days, but that's okay. It's nice to have those. And you knit a t-shirt too.
I did. My last garment of the first half of the year was also a t-shirt, but this one is t-shirt number 1 or T number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And it's also a very casual, just like boxy t-shirt. This one does have a little bit of a longer sleeve than the one that you just talked about. Yeah, I like that you did that. I do like that. But it also has that same collar detail where you knit the collar starting from the front side and then tack it down folded onto the front. So I feel like most of the time when you knit a collar, you're picking up from the right side and then, you know, you knit it and then tack it down on the wrong side. But it was the same deal with you where you...
Yeah, it's like the opposite of what you would normally do.
Yes. So, but I think it looks really good. I think it's a really nice detail.
Yours has like a saddle shoulder to it, which is really nice.
It does. I was really into saddle shoulders this year, so I think this is the first of 3 saddle shoulder garments that I did.
They're nice.
I really love them. And I also used the Chibi Sport yarn by Moondrake Fibers, which is the same yarn that we used for the red socks that we both knit. So this one, I believe, is called Electric Blue or Cobalt Blue. And it's super bright. This is very much out of my comfort zone of what I would normally knit. And to be honest, I haven't reached for it as often as I thought I would because it is just so different from what I usually wear. So it's cute. It's just maybe part of me is like I'm glad that I branched out of the color scheme that I normally go for and tried something different. And I loved knitting this. Like this was so fun to knit, and it's so bright and so happy. It's just not something that I confidently wear every single day. It's something that I feel like has to be like styled and I have to be in the mood for, and I don't know that I would. I think I'd have to really think about if I want to make another piece in this color or something similar.
That's fair, but I do really like it.
Yeah. I did love this pattern. It was super fun to knit up. It was really quick. The bottom does have a folded over hem, which I do think is a really nice detail that I don't see too often. And I think for a lot of sweaters it would be too thick, but for this sport weight yarn, it ends up perfect. Like I really like the polished edge that it gives to the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's very clean, like crisp.
Very crisp.
These are the Caramel Kiss socks by Sari Nordlund. I'll try to show the really beautiful lace texture that they have all over. And I knit these in Coast to Coast classic sock base from her Fantasy Coffee House collection. So these are the color London Fog, or this is the color London Fog, I should say. I paired it with this pattern because I really wanted just a very simple muted color that would really show off all of this detailed, delicate lace. And I will say that these took forever. They took a really long time, partially because when I do lace socks, I tend to do magic loops so that one side is lace and one side is the foot. And I really don't love doing magic loop, but in this case, I think that it is worth it. And they're just a really beautiful, delicate, I don't know, piece to have with a really pretty outfit. So I really like these.
The last item that I have is also a pair of socks. So this is the Lima socks by Suzanne Mueller or Paula Strict. And I just think they look ridiculous. The shape is just so odd. I used Coast to Coast Classic Sock in the colorway What in the Eight Hells is Coffee, and I just think it's an absolutely beautiful yarn. It's very tonal. It's just this like classic dark brown color, but just, oh my goodness, the way that these, they look like they have little butts, and it's so weird. They look really cute on, and so like I've kept them because they're good to wear. And they look normal when you're wearing them. Like, you would never know. It's just when they're laying in the sock drawer like this, they're just the weirdest. They're so cute. And the heel is very interesting because it's like an increase where the heel is knit in stockinette, so it kind of departs from the ribbing. I swear I blocked these, and I did try to stretch out the ribbing as much as I could to make it look a little more normal. And like, I think the foot looks fine because it has the stockinette down here to balance it out. I don't know. It's not... I hate to be like, I wouldn't make it again because they don't look cute in my sock drawer, but I think I wouldn't make it again because they don't look cute in my sock drawer. I think there's other ways to make a ribbed sock that would just lay a little nicer and be a little cuter.
Yeah, I agree. But I love the pairing of this dark brown with a rib. I might copy that this next year, actually.
Yeah, I do love that combination, and I love the yarn. I love a dark brown sock. I just think they're so cute. They are very wearable. They look good on my foot. It's just
they're a little goofy.
They're a little goofy.
Well, to end on that lighthearted note, we wanted to ask if you would share what your favorite piece or pieces that you've made this year are. We love hearing what you have made, and if there's anything that really especially brought you joy this year or that you wear all the time, we would love to hear it. And we are going to make a part 2 so that we have July through December, but we don't know exactly what day we're going to put that out. We'll try to put them pretty soon, like close together. But if you're not subscribed, we'll do a little plug here at the end of this video so that way if you subscribe, you can catch that second part to this video. And we might even do our sewing too. We're mostly knitting, but we did do quite a bit of sewing this year too.
So if you made it this far, we really appreciate you knitting along with us. Hopefully you made good progress on whatever it is that you're working on. And like Rachel said, we would love to hear what you made in this past year and what you're working on now.
Thank you for joining us.